Hello everyone, welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to learn about the Mule validation. If you talk about the Mule validation, it is used to validate the content that we are going to send in the request. It is going to validate. Okay, so we have the connector in the Mule soft where we are going to use to validate the content of the request. So let's go and implement this project. I'm going to start everything from scratch. So let's create a new flow and let's go to the Mule configuration file and give the flow name as the Mule validation. Okay, click on finish. So my flow has been created. So let's use the listener to get the request. Okay, let's configure the listener. So already I have the listener, that is configure 3, and this is something this. Let me show you. If you see, this is taking 8084 as a port and slash flow as a base path, and okay, and this is already, you can see, config 3 configured in the global element. Now let's take the base path as a v4 and my flow. Okay, now it is done. Now here I am going to validate this content. Let me show you here. Maybe I have written here also. Let me check. Not here. Okay, let me go here. Okay, this is the content I am going to validate. If you see, this is the content I am going to send. Name as my Rishu, employee ID is this, and learn and pass official at the gmail.com ID, that my my email ID, and the skill that I know, that IIB and MQ. Okay, and one more part is that experience. Let's add the experience. Just hold on, let me write. Okay, and okay, 2 years. So that is all I have included. One, let me add here comma. Okay, now it's done. Okay, so this is the request I am going to send, where I am going to send name as issue, employer ID, email ID, skills, and this. And I want to validate this content. So what content I want to validate? This should be, employee ID should be always integer. Okay, it should be not a like that I and O, these should be not, it should be always integer like that. Let me remove this like that. Okay, this should be a valid email ID. Email ID should be not wrong. Okay, this should be a valid email ID. You can see here dot com is missing. So if I am sending like that, it will be going to validate, giving the validation error. So it should be like that. Okay, skill should be, that is fine, skill leave it. I don't want to validate the skill. Experience should be, experience field should be mandatory. If someone is sending the request, if someone is sending the request without experience like that, like that, then it is going to fail. Okay, so experience field should be present in the content. Okay, so these are the field I am going to validate. So let's make a flow in the MuleSoft so that how I can validate. If you write here as a validation, validate, you can see these are the all connectors that is present for validation. If you want to, let me brief you, if you want to validate the URL, then you can use this. If you want to validate IP, then you can use is blank string, this string. And if you want to validate the email, is true, in false, these all thing is denied IP. These are the lots of is not null. These are the thing that we have the option to validate it. And if you want to validate all the validation at one time, then you can use the all. So I am going to show you all also. Okay, so if you want to validate all the content at one time, then we can use this all. Okay, so let's see the validation first. Okay, why this is created here? Okay, let me delete this. Okay, okay, now first I want to validate my employee ID. Employee ID should be integer. So let's go and check each number. Okay, so each number is a type of integer. Okay, so let's first select the each number. With the help of each number, I am going to validate employee ID. It should be integer. Okay, second, I want to validate my mail should be valid. Anyone cannot send a wrong email. So let's select each email here. Okay, I want to validate the email. Okay, next I want to validate which field. I want to validate experience, and experience should not be null. Experience and skill, let's take the skill also. So experience is not null. Okay, so this is the thing. If you can see here, if you see here, this is the experience 2 year, and I want this to field to be mandatory. I want so I will pick this validation as a is not null experience. So let's perform these all three validation. For now skill left it. Okay, and name, these are the field, make it as optional, and these three field employee ID, email ID and experience, these three things make it as a mandatory. Okay, I want to validate all three fields: employee ID, email ID and the experience. So let's go here and let's change the name as a validate emp id. Okay, for let's this also, I'll let him change the name as a validate mail. Validate mail. So this is I'm doing because I want to make it more readable, so that in anyone in future came and directly they can see what basically this character do. That is the benefit of this changing the display name. Here I am validating the experience. So experience mandatory. Okay, now let's change, let's do the configuration of each connector. Here I need to keep the value. Okay, let's select the number type. So number should be integer. I want number to be integer. And let's select here field value. Okay, so which field value we are expecting. So I am expecting here, I am sending in payload of course, so it should be going from the payload. And in payload, what is the field name? In payload, it is the field name is emp id. Let's take the emp id. Let's go here. Okay, similarly for the other, let's go and do same thing. And also one thing I mixed here, if you see here, this is the thing it is going to validate. This is going to once we will send a message in the payload, we are sending this in the payload, and you know the payload is going to be whatever I am sending in the body, it is going to be in payload in listener. So it will came here as a payload. So we are doing payload and dot emp id to fetch the value of the emp id we are using. So if you want to fetch any value up from this, we have to do payload dot and that field name which you want to fetch the value. Okay, so for now I am fetching the value of payload dot emp id. Okay, now but let's take a scenario. We have triggered a flow, somehow the employee id is integer, then it will move forward and validation is successful. Let's take example, but is somehow someone is sending not integer as a payload, integer as MPID. Then what error you want to throw, that you need to give mention here. What error you want to print in the uh, this response. Okay, so let's write here something like that. Invalid employee ID. It should be in integer only. Okay, let's make it in double quote. That will be a helpful, because this is a string. So let's make, okay. So I have written like that. In case of some error is throwing in this connector and I am sending non-integer as EMP ID, this error is going to be in the this response, that is invalid employee ID. It should be integer only. Let's validate the email. To validate the email, first again you need to select the which field email is coming. The email is coming in the payload dot email. Okay, so let's select the payload first, and after dot and the which field, let's copy the field. The field is coming at email, so let's copy this and give here. And what message, in case of email is coming wrong email, then what message you want to print, that you have to give here. So let's write here as a invalid email ID, please check once. Okay, so this is the, in case of someone is sending wrong email ID, then I am going to validate this email ID using the payload dot email ID. This field I am going to validate, and after that, in case of some wrong way of sending, then I am going to throw this error in the response. Let's go to validate the skills. To validate the skills, again same thing. What I have to do, I have to go to the payload, and what is the field name? Field name is the, sorry, skills. It is not skill, it is experience. And let's move here. So it is going to validate the experience under the payload. It is going to take this field, and this field, it should be a, this field should be a mandatory. It should be a mandatory. So if someone is sending, a request without the experience, okay, then we need to throw some error. And what error I can throw? Please mention your experience field is null. Okay, so this is the thing that is we have configured correctly. Now let's use one transform message so that I can prepare some response in case of some successful happening. Okay, or let's do one thing. Let's use the set payload. Whatever coming in the payload, I will directly send to the as a response. Okay, I'm directly, if this is successful, whatever I'm sending, whatever I'm sending request, I will get in the response. If it is unsuccessful, I will get the error that I have set in this all three: invalid employee ID, invalid email ID, and please mention your experience. Okay, so that is all. Flow has been done in the Mule validation. It's time to debug and deploy, and let's see what is happening. So let me add a breakpoint here. Okay, once this is going to deploy, we are going to test, we are going to hit this flow, and let's see whether it is validation is happening successful or not. Okay, so let's wait for the deploy. Let's first time let's send the everything as a correct. So this time I am sending my employee ID is a correct, it is integer. Email ID is also correct, and the skill I am also sending. So let's see whether what we are getting response. Again, after that, I am going to modify the employee ID, email ID, and these all thing I am going to modify, and let's see what is happening. Okay. So let's wait till the deploy. Now you can see it had deployed successfully. Now let's hit the flow. Currently I am sending everything as a correct. So let's hit the flow, and flow has hit. Now everything came here. You can see in the payload it will came the value that I am sending. This is the value I am sending. Okay. So let's validate every content. First number is validated, everything number successfully, it is an integer validated. Second, it will validate the email ID. Email ID also validated. That's fine. Email ID correct. Now it will validate the experience field that is present or not. Of course, experience field is sending in the request, so it will be validation will be successful. So let's move forward. Now it is validated. Now whatever coming in the payload, I will just send in the response. And now if you see same thing, it will came in the response. Now let's try to do some wrong thing. Okay. First, I want to make the mistake into the first field, that is the employee ID. So let's make the some rather than integer something different. So let me make some alphabet here. I have written some alphabet in the employee ID. Let's send the request and let's see what is happening. I just send the request. It came here. Here it will validate either it is an integer or not. And you can see it is not an integer. So let's move forward. You can see the error has thrown. In the error it is coming at invalid employee ID and it should be integer. Once I move forward, it will not validate the all content. It will directly move from here and it will send the response. So this thing already I explained you. If in the flow at any point some error is happening, it will not move forward. It will directly return response from this. So there will be arrow happen from here and it will directly send the response from to listener. So these are the content not going to filter whether email ID is correct or the experience is present or not. So let's, if you move, I move forward, you can see the flow has terminated here and it will give that invalid employee ID. It should be integer only, and it is same as what I have stated here in the properties of the error. Okay, if you see here validate employee ID, you can see same thing I have written here and same thing is coming here. Okay, so you can see employee ID validation is in not successful. Let's try to validate the other content. Okay, let me make the employee ID as a correct, and let's try to make the email ID is wrong. I have removed the dot from the email ID. Okay, let's send and see what is happening. Okay, I just sent the request and request came here. You can see employee ID has been validated successfully. Now here it is going to validate the email ID, but email ID I am sending wrong. Here dot is missing in the email ID. So again it is going to send this error. You can see error has been sent. Again this is not going to validate experience. It will terminate from here itself and it will throw the error, and the error is going to throw is invalid email ID and please check once. Okay. So this is the error it is going to throw. So let's move forward, and you can see same error in the please invalid email ID, please check once. Let's validate the third field that I have implemented here, the experience. Okay, so let me make the this as a correct. Let me add the dot here. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's me remove the experience field. Okay, and let's try to hit the flow. Okay, I have sent the flow. It came here. It validated the employee. Employee is correct. It validated the email. Email is correct. Now it will validate the experience, whether the experience is being sent from in request or not. You can see here I am not sending the any experience in the request, so it is going to be fail and it will give the error. You can see it has failed and it returned. Please mention your experience field is null. Okay, and if I move forward, this will send in the response. You can see this will send in response. Now that is done. Let's take a scenario. What if I am sending all three field as a wrong in the request? So let's implement this. Okay, I am sending this as a wrong. I am also sending wrong. Okay, mail ID, and I'm not also sending the experience. The here employee ID is also not integer, email ID is invalid, and the experience field is missing. And these all are the three validation that we have kept here to do. First it will validate the email employee ID, second it will validate the email, and third it will validate the experience. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's try to hit the flow and let's see what is happening. So let's hit the flow. Flow has hit it. You can see it will first validate the employee ID. It validated employee ID. Okay, employee ID, it throw error because invalid employee ID. I am sending not integer. It should be integer only. Let's move forward. You can see it's thrown the response, but these two field, that is the email ID and the experience, it has not validated. But that is a problem. I want every field to be validated so that in future if I need to fix, I will fix it. Okay, so how can we implement the project so that we can validate all the field at a time? So we have the option to do that. At a time we can validate all the three fields. So let's implement the project. If we go to the validation, if we again go to validation, let's go to validation. Okay, and if you go below, there is an option called all. Let's drag and drop it. You can see whatever the validation you are keeping here, it will validate at one time. Okay, let's take example. I am keeping this in the all. I am also keeping this in the all, and I am also keeping this in the all. Okay, this all three validation, that is an employee ID is integer, email ID should be valid, and experience should be mandatory. Okay, experience field should be mandatory. These all validation later, what was happening once the employee ID I was sending wrong, it was throwing error, and from here it is giving the response. Now what I am doing, I am using the all connector. Under all connector, I am keeping all validation. Here is the three validation. You can keep as much as validation, and you can do the same thing. So same thing, same project I am going to do. I am going to hit the flow. It is going to validate the employee ID. It is going to validate the email ID. It is going to validate experience. And these all three is going to validate. And these all three response we are going to get if anything wrong happening. Okay. So let's hit the flow and let's see what response I am getting. Currently, if you see, all three field is wrong. Employee ID is not integer, email ID is also not valid, and the experience field is missing. So let's see what is happening if I am sending all three. Okay, so let's me hit the flow. Okay, I just hit the flow. Okay, currently still is in the deploy process, so let's wait till it is getting deploy. Okay, you can see it is currently deploying. Okay, now it is done. Let me hit the flow now. Okay, let's wait, still it is deploying. Let's try this time. Now you can see it had deployed successfully. Now flow has came here. You can see it came here. It will validate the number, and I am sending the number and not as an integer. So it will first validate the employee ID. Now it has thrown error because you can see invalid employee ID and it should be an integer. Again it will move forward and it will validate the email ID. Again email ID I am sending the wrong, So again it will going to throw error because email id is not correct. You can see email id, invalid email id, and please check once. Again it will validate experience, and it is going to throw error. Till now you can see no response has came, still it is sending the request. Let's move forward. You can see again it threw error because the please mention your experience field is null, and you can see experience field I am not sending anything. Till now here no response came. Now if I move forward, you can see it has, you can see it will throw error, and it will throw error all three field: invalid employee id, invalid email id, and please mention experience. All three is going to send in the response. Now if you go here, and we are going to see all three things: invalid email id, employee id, invalid email id, and please mention your experience. Okay, what if I am going to send the two field as a wrong, not all three field? Let's experience is correct, email id field and the mail is correct, wrong. These two error is going to come. So let's hit the flow again. Here this time experience is correct, but the employee id is wrong, so it is going to throw error. Email id is also wrong, it is going to throw error. But for the experience it is okay, so it is not, it will not throw error. And overall you can see these two error, employee id and the email id is sent as error, and it will throw error in the response. You can see this time these two is coming: invalid employee id and invalid email id. Okay, so in this way we can validate the content of your request using the Mule validation. Okay, and here we have taken a small example. In the real world it will be a big example, and we can do the validation. Okay, so here we have option: either we can validate the particular one field using the one connector, or we can validate the all the content using the all. Okay, so hope you have enjoyed this series, and if you have any question, any doubt, any, you can send me a mail. And if you are new and like the video, please subscribe it. Thank you all.